Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and get going. Do we expect Dave and Stuart?
I expect Dave. I have not heard from Stuart.
All right, well, we'll get going, and if we need to skip over the financial report, we can until he. There we go. Oh, hold on a second. My connection is not as good. I'm gonna sit down here real quick. All right. Notwithstanding any provision of the EDA bylaws to the contrary, as permitted under Albemarle County's Continuity of Government Ordinance, Chapter 1283 of the 2020 Acts of the General Assembly, and the resolution of this body adopted on April 21, 2020, we are holding this meeting by real-time electronic means with no authority member physically present at a single central location. All authority members are participating electronically. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 6 of the county's Continuity of Government Ordinance. All authority members will identify themselves and state their general physical location by electronic means during the roll call, which we will hold next. This meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the county's website. The public has real-time audiovisual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone, both as provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. The public is also invited to offer live comment during the meeting's public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and must be germane to matters on today's agenda. The public is also invited to send questions, comments, and suggestions to the authority through the county's Economic Development Office at any time. All right. Richie, you want to call the roll?
I will do it. Okay. Director Long.
Present in Crozet and Albemarle County.
Director Ray.
Present in Albemarle County.
Let's see. Director Shreve. Dave. Director Munson. Stuart Munson. Let's see. Director Imhoff.
Here in Albemarle County.
And Director McNaughton.
Present in Troy, Virginia.
And Supervisor McKeel.
I am present in the outstanding Jack Jewett Magisterial District, where all good things happen.
Right, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay. Matters from the public. Jennifer, did anybody sign up to speak? Jennifer, you're muted, so I'm not sure.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Nobody has currently signed up. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak, can you indicate by raising your hand now? And no, sir.
All right. Then next is approval of the minutes. Are there any comments on the minutes?
Move for approval.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. The ayes have it. So financial report, we don't have Dave, so I don't know. Let's just pass that by unless there's anything that Roger or Jennifer, we need specifically to talk about in the financials at this point.
Mr. Chair, I do not believe that there is.
All right, so we'll pass that over for now and we can come back to it later. So next, on to new business. First item on the agenda is the Albemarle County debt financing. And we have, let's see, Ms. Birch, Mr. Culp, and Courtney Rogers as well. on. So are we ready
That
to
is
go?
correct. Yeah, I think we're
All right.
ready. Thank
Is
you.
this just
sorry?
quick point of order? Is this something I need to step out for, Don or Jennifer, Reggie?
So, so Steve, thanks for bringing that up. I think it's probably it's good to move Director McNaughton over into the other room. Just for the record, he has filed a form disqualifying himself from consideration of this bond issuance.
Okay. And I will point out that Mr. Munson is here now, so we do still have a quorum.
Good.
So
Sorry, I had my mute on. Yelling and nobody was paying attention.
So
All right.
Mr. Mignon, you're going to go out. You'll see the little brief flash.
Okay, perfect.
Great. You ready for me?
Mhm.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Nelsie Birch here, the CFO for the county. I'm with some very important people in my life to get us through this bond issuance over the next few weeks. They are as follows. Courtney Rogers, I think many of you know Courtney. He's been the county's longstanding financial advisor with Davenport and Company. And in a moment after I get done with the introductions, I'll turn it over to Courtney, who'll walk through the financing and the deal, some of the numbers. And then from there, Courtney will turn it over to another longstanding partner with us in the county, Chris Culp, who's with Hunton Andrews Kurth LLP. He is our bond counsel, and we'll walk through really the legal aspects of the financing, answer any questions, talk to you all about the resolution that we're asking you to support today. And really the reason for our being here, some of you have been through this, others, this might be your first entree into this sort of financing, but we're asking the EDA to support our upcoming bond issuance as our conduit issuer. And like I said, Courtney and Chris will go through more of the details. I'm happy to be here to answer any questions. And I did want to mention that Daniel Green, who doesn't have his camera on, but he is our Chief of Treasury here for the county. There's Daniel. I'm not sure if you all have had a chance to meet him before, but he's really the person behind the scenes who is responsible for our treasury operations, which is debt, cash, and investment management. And so Daniel is the person that I am counting on to help us get over the finish line, working directly with Courtney on the financing and Chris as well. So I wanted him to have a moment to be introduced to all of you. So with that, Courtney, I will turn it to you to take us from here.
Awesome. Thank you. I am going to, give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Get that going. We'll do this full screen mode. There we go. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
All right.
Hi.
So good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be with you guys, even though it's virtual. I will tell you, just because we've all been living in an unusual world the last year, I'm at my very first in-person conference in another state today. So thank you for letting us be here virtually, or I have to send someone else. I'm down in Georgia. I'm actually in Augusta, Georgia. And I will tell you that the masks have disappeared. It's like a light switch flipped off yesterday. And so it's hopefully, it's going to be that way soon and we'll somewhat get back to normal. The one thing that's interesting over the last year is that our business hasn't changed. Chris and I have been very busy. We've still been, the bond market, other than a disruption, which I'll talk about in a moment, has been very functional. We have been borrowing money for new projects. We've been borrowing money for refinancings over the last year. And so life has gone on when it has come to the bond market. Good news is it's a good time to borrow money. And I'll talk about that in just a moment from an interest rate perspective. So let me talk about what we're doing today. As Nelsie mentioned, we have had the good fortune of being the financial advisor for the county. I've been working in the county now for 21 years. And we've been to market periodically every so many years as projects arise. And so we are at that point again. We've got about I'm around to say $66 million worth of needs. Some of those are reimbursed the county for some projects that have been done already. And so they're seeking to reimburse their coffers to build the cash back up. And also, there are some projects that have a known deadline spending over the next 7 months, totaling about 25 million. Some of you may recall that we did a line of credit last year that it was put in place really for projects that don't have as known a schedule. So this actually, this 25 million is known, and while rates are good and low, we want to go ahead and lock those rates in, which is what we're planning to do here in the very near future. We also have some, two, in fact, potential refinancing opportunities, and I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. One of the things that's been a hallmark of the county is, since we started working with the county back in the early 2000s, was we achieved what is triple ratings, which is very hard to do. There are not many counties out there. I think it's under 50 now around the country of total counties who have all 3 ratings of AAA. In the county, we are going to go seek those ratings again. We are confident that there's nothing negative that's going on, so we should be in great shape to get those reaffirmed. I'll let you know that these bonds, because they carry what we call an appropriation risk, they're not full faith and credit. Because they are appropriation bonds, they will have a notch lower. So when you see the final documents, you'll see that they should carry a AA1, AA+, which is 1 notch off the AAAs. Which is considered the issuer or geo ratings of the county. We plan on selling these competitive. We'd like to put them out there and let the best bid win. That is, there's a lot of money in the bond market, and so we've seen some very competitive bond sales over the last couple of years, and we anticipate that will be the case here in the near future. Mr. Culp and his team will be putting together and have been working on a draft of an offering document. We call that a preliminary official statement. So we're finishing up and filling in the last few blanks of that document, which will be put out there, which is essentially like the marketing document that we use to sell the bonds. So we're looking for a sell date coming up in early June, around the 10th is kind of what we're looking at. And we anticipate rates are still going to be very good. If you look at this graph, this goes back on the left side back to the year 2000, kind of basically when we started working with the county. And we've been lucky that rates have basically been trending downward. On the right side, you'll see over the last basically 4+ years, you can see where we sold the last fixed income bonds. It was in the 2.5% to 3% range, the 20-year rate. Now we're down in the 1 to 150 range in terms of the actual 20-year rate that we're looking at. And when you look at just what's happened since January of 2020, except for these months in the March, April timeframe, where of course the pandemic started, we did have a disruption in the marketplace where rates jumped up. But except for that period of time, you can see that all rates 30-year and lower have been below 2%. So we're expecting to see very good rates out in the marketplace. We should see an all-in rate less than 2%, and then some for these bonds. The projects that the county has outlined are listed here. We do have a few that are taxable due to some IRS regulations that we have to follow. But this kind of lists out the various projects, the largest of which are an addition to the Crozet Elementary School, some school maintenance and replacement program, and that's generally taking care of multiple buildings in terms of some of the maintenance things and replacements that need to take place. And then Scottsville Elementary addition and improvements is another one of the larger projects, as well as Red Hill Elementary additions and improvements to phase 2 of that. So a lot of school projects are built in here. And again, we're not using the line because we know these are going to get done here in the next several months, and we want to go ahead and lock that in before rates, which are expected to rise in the future, before they get away from us. What you're going to see in the next couple of pages, we've used interest rates from the beginning, just a couple of weeks back when we were putting this together for the county. We've added a cushion of about 25 basis points, not knowing when rates may go up. Over the last couple of weeks, they've stayed fairly steady. There are days where they go up, days where they come down. We actually gained a little bit of ground by about a basis point today, so that's a good thing. So been pretty steady. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to put those taxable bonds at the beginning and wrap the tax exempt bonds around it, because those are going to be a little slightly higher rates. We want to put those on the beginning of the yield curve, if you would. But you'll see in that the last set of numbers, the last column shows you the annual debt service, which is basically level once we what we call wrap around the taxable piece. And then this is what the new debt service looks for the county. And graphically, you'll see is basically a stair step down, and that enables the county to take on additional projects down the road while keeping the budgetary annual debt service payments roughly the same. So we've got room to be able to add on other projects down the road as necessary. Two of the things that we do as advisor and the county does is they're looking at debt as well, as make sure we follow the policies we put in place. And two of the more important debt policies are, one is total outstanding debt divided by the value of property in the county, personal and real. And you'll see here that we have a 2% not to exceed number, and we're just below 1%. And as our projected, we just use 2% as a sort of a growth factor. We're projecting it to obviously decline as debt service is paid off, as well as the additional growth on assessed value. And then the other one we look at is how much annual debt service is paid as a percentage of the budget, or in this case, as a percentage of revenues. And 10% is our guideline. You can see here we're just a shade above 6%, with this light green being the new debt. So in really good shape there, and have room if necessary for additional debt in the future. The two refunding opportunities we're looking at is an issue we did in 2011, as well as another one in 2015. We look at a 3% sort of net present value basis to make sure that it makes sense. The principal that we're looking to refund is roughly about 20 million. You can see the existing rates there varying from 3 1/8 to 5% on the 11s, and 2.35, which was a bank transaction we did in 2015. And when we look at the potential new rates, we're looking at something in the 150 to 175 range, all in TIC there. And the savings that we're looking at could be in the $1.7 million range, with the net present value being over 10% on the 11s and just a shade above 4 on the 2015. So this is, again, with a little bit of a cushion in there. So hopefully we'll do better than that, and rates will stay where they are, and will come in even better than that number. And this kind of gives you those savings that they're spread out on a budgetary basis, about 1.9 million, a little under 2 million. And that'll basically be that's the annual, if you would, savings that we're projecting. So what we've got left is, of course, we're asking you all to consider adoption of the resolution that allows the Board of Supervisors to move forward with this transaction. They will be meeting tomorrow to approve documents. And once we have those, we will have our rating calls basically next week. Get the ratings back the week after that, and then we're looking again to have our bond sale on June 10th and get closed before the end of the county's fiscal year, June 30th. So with that, I will, Mr. Chair, happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Camera off because I'm got some internet issues all of a sudden. So I'm trying to do the best I can too.
Okay. If no one has any questions, then I'll turn it over to Mr. Colt and let him answer or kind of walk you through the documents, and maybe if you have questions on the legal documents, Chris will be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you, Courtney, and thanks, Nelsie, for the introduction earlier. Good to be with you all again this afternoon. Thank you for your time. Our role at Hunton is to serve as bond counsel for the transaction. So we're working with your counsel, Jim Bowling, the county attorney's office, and the rest of the finance team to pull together the legal documents for this transaction. And then we will ultimately be giving an opinion at closing, addressing the tax status of the bonds, which is what the bondholders are ultimately looking for. But we have for your consideration today a resolution that's similar to what you would have, some of you would have seen in prior financings. We put in place really a master financing structure back in 2003, and then with each issuance, we've been supplementing that master trust agreement and the master financing agreement with each issuance. And we have in place the trust agreement, which is the EDA's document with a bond trustee, and it provides for the basic financing structure of the bonds. And then we have a financing agreement, which is between the EDA and the county. And that's the agreement pursuant to which the county is agreeing, subject to annual appropriation, to make the payments sufficient to pay the debt service on the bonds. The EDA is serving, again, as a conduit issuer. And so the EDA is the actual issuer of the bonds, but the bondholders know that the ultimate security behind this is the county. And the county's credit, being AAA, is a good credit, but they are looking for the county to make the payment. There are no other EDA funds or accounts that are at issue or at risk for this financing. It's only the revenues received by the county that are being pledged specifically to these bonds. So the resolution for your consideration sort of describes the new money projects that Courtney mentioned in sort of general scope of those, the potential refundings, both of all three of the 11, 13, and 15 bonds that are potential refundings if the savings targets can be met. Approves the forms of the documents which were included or made available as a part of the agenda package. Again, we are issuing pursuant to a supplement to the trust agreement. That includes the form of the bonds themselves that are being approved. We have a supplement to the financing agreement, which will attach the new debt service schedule, and that would be the county's payment obligation. And then we have the disclosure document, the marketing material that will be used with the bond to offer the bonds to potential investors, the preliminary official statement as it's described. Section 2 of the resolution includes the parameters that we're asking you to approve. And so we're asking the EDA board to approve the sale of the bonds within these parameters, and then delegate to the officers working with the county administration to execute on the financing. So you'll see in section 2 a not to exceed principal amount in an aggregate sum, true interest cost parameters, which both for tax exempt bonds and the taxable bonds. As Courtney mentioned, these have cushions in them, and he certainly expects market conditions to be well within those parameters. A not to exceed final maturity of 2041, and then the parameter about sale price to the underwriter, and then the redemption provisions. The resolution does authorize either a competitive public offering or a negotiated public offering. As Courtney mentioned, the current expectation is for this to be a competitive public sale. If for some reason there was something squirrely that happened in the market and the county still wanted to proceed, sometimes we can pivot to do a negotiated sale and still get the bonds issued, but that's not likely. We're not expecting that, and the competitive public sale is the likely scenario. The resolution authorizes, as I mentioned, the officers of the EDA to execute on the financing so long as it meets the parameters that you all approve as a part of the resolution. I always like to, some of you will remember, but I always like to emphasize that there is no personal liability of EDA directors with respect to this bond issuance. That's consistent with the EDA statute in the Virginia Code, and the documents themselves include the similar disclaimers about any personal liability related to the EDA directors. And so that, Mr. Chairman, is an overview of the resolution, but I'm happy to answer any questions people might have or go through any particular more detailed items as warranted.
Anybody have any questions for Chris or Courtney?
I have a quick question, please. Will the authority be receiving any sort of a bond fee for issuing the bonds?
It is not currently set up that way, consistent with prior financing, since the county itself is the borrower as opposed to a private entity or a nonprofit entity. Currently it's set up that there's no EDA fee assessed for this financing.
Okay.
Just a clarification question. Is the Board of Supervisors looking to us to review the financial structure of this and advise them on it, or are they looking for us to just sort of approve that this is, or be the entity through which this is done?
They're looking for you to be the conduit. We wanted to share with you kind of what was going on, but
Okay.
you know, they're looking to us for structure advice that I give to Nelsie and her team, and then onto the board through Nelsie and her team.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Courtney, I just had one sort of practical question. So does the interest rate for the taxable and the non-taxable the same? Are they?
They're not. The taxable rate's going to be higher. It varies depending upon various things in the marketplace, anywhere from, I'll say, 0.75% to 1% higher than typically what you see on a tax exempt rate.
But are those marketed separately, or does it the same person buy, or same entity?
They're separate. We'll actually sell those separate from the so you'll have a Series A, which is taxable, and Series B that's tax exempt. And Chris, I may have them backwards. I can't remember how we have them in the documents, but there'll be separate series. We'll sell those separately.
Okay.
The refundings will actually be all in with the new money. We sell those as one big series. Just the way our market works, the bigger the issue, you end up getting bigger funds involved, and it helps with the marketing.
One other item I would add, although you didn't ask the question, I feel it's appropriate to provide this to the EDA. We want to get back on an every other year schedule for issuing bonds. The county has not issued bonds for 4 years. And quite frankly, it's not best to do that and use our own cash to support the capital funds like we have for the last 4 years. And we would use potentially the line of credit in the off year to reimburse ourselves. But that is stuff that we'll be working through with Courtney and the Treasury Management team led by Daniel to make that determination. So you should see us come back every other year until and unless we go out for referendum, if that's in a future plan for the county.
That's a great point, Nelsie. And when we did the line of credit, I think we set it up so we may see you sooner than in a couple of years, just to get ourselves back in alignment. But that is the plan kind of going forward. So it may take an extra step to get there, but that's our plan.
Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add, or questions or comments? I assume you've looked at everything.
I have looked at everything, and it's really a normal process, except this may well be a public issue, which is of course different because of the prospectus that needs to be drafted and fine-tuned, but everything looks fine so far. Chris has been a tremendous help as always. Did it come through?
Thank you, Jim.
Hey, Don, can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So it's following up a little bit on what George had asked, and it regards the relationship between the EDA and the trustee. I take it from the sixth supplemental agreement that the EDA won't be administering the funds, that actually the trustee will be doing all the work in that respect. Is that correct?
That's correct. The trust agreement already sets up like a project fund, the cost of issuance account, and a bond fund. And so the EDA's role is important, obviously, at the beginning to issue the bonds, but then would step back, and after the bonds are issued, the trustee will step in the role of administering the bond proceeds, and there would be a requisition process for the county to requisition the money to make to get payments to reimburse themselves, or to make payments going forward on project cost. So there's not an active role that the EDA needs to take on after the issuance of the bonds.
And Chris, that's pretty standard for an issuance of this size, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, it really, again, goes to the point of the EDA's role as a conduit issuer. But the bondholders are really looking for the bond trustee to sort of take on that responsibility to sort of administer the use of the proceeds going forward. And that's consistent with most bond issues of this sort.
So Courtney, I know this was outside the scope of what you're here to talk about today, but I would like to talk just a little bit about the difference between the types of bonds we're issuing today and bonds that we can issue to nonprofit organizations, and how the bonds could be actually used to charge a fee for those as a sustainable income model for the county. Can you talk about the different types of debt that we're talking about here in terms of bonds?
Sure, and I may even turn to Chris, who's even more knowledgeable than I am on some of these pieces, because I deal almost exclusively with local governments, water and sewer authorities, and I don't do housing bonds and like corporate bonds and things like that. Chris's firm deals with some of those more than we do, but typically like a 501c3, which is a not-for-profit, private schools are considered, for instance, not-for-profits. Typically, those types of entities that come through EDAs and IDAs in Virginia have been charged fees. Those are usually negotiated, discussed ahead of time. Sometimes some of the EDAs have them in their charters, things like that, so that the entity coming knows in advance that they're going to have to pay a fee to use you as a conduit. And that's typically what we've seen around the state. And Chris was correct. And we do a number of these around for local governments. And typically the local governments are not charged a fee for doing the transaction, because usually they're the ones funding the authorities to begin with. I don't know, Chris, you want to add to that? Maybe talk a little bit more about some of the ones you're seeing late. You know, the rules have changed over my almost 30-year career of doing this. And so I know Chris is more involved again with his firm on some of the nuances.
Sure. This EDA probably has been approached, and I know has done financings for some private schools, for continuing care retirement communities as well, for hospitals that are structured for the IRS purposes as 501c3 nonprofit entities. They need to, I mean, they have the ability under the IRS code to access tax exempt debt, but they have to go through a governmental issuer like the EDA in order to access the tax exempt market. And so historically it's been appropriate for EDAs to charge fees for that access. But when you have a situation where you've got the county or a city or whatever, a true governmental entity that is benefiting from the financing itself, typically the EDAs don't charge a fee for that, because the county is in large measure often funding some of the EDA's operations, and so it just becomes a circular just payment stream if a fee is charged in that circumstance. And this is really for public governmental projects and facilities, and a lot of EDAs around the state decide as a part of their organization not to charge a fee in that circumstance.
And I might add to this, might be a good point, if I could, Mr. Chairman, talk about bank qualification, because I know, and especially Chris can kind of get into the legal side of it. I'll let you know on the finance side of it. You know, when in 2017, when Congress changed the tax code, they lowered the banks' ability. They lowered the tax rate on banks. And so when banks charge on a tax-exempt basis a bank qualified fee, they're basically passing on their tax ability to, like if they're saving because they're paying a certain amount of taxes and they're buying taxes and bonds, they pass on some of those savings to you. That's called bank qualification. But since they're paying lower taxes, we really haven't seen a lot of benefit on bank qualification for some of these smaller projects. And for those that may not know, it's bank qualification is only when the county is issuing less than 10 million in a year. So obviously we're going to be issuing more than 10 million. So no one can come to you and ask for your bank qualified, whatever remainder you might have, because there's not going to be any for calendar year 21. And I know that was a case on a situation not long ago, may have been last year for you guys. And when we did the line of credit, we basically did the same thing. We're just not seeing a lot. We just had a bid for another Virginia locality, and a lot of times we'll ask what is your BQ rate? What is your non-BQ rate? And I think 9 out of 10 or 7 out of the 8 that we got were basically, it didn't matter. Bank qualification was the same, whether it was BQ or non-BQ. So just so you know, there's unless the tax rate goes back up on banks, they're not paying as much on taxes, so they don't have really anything to pass on in the ability for BQ deals. So I think that one entity that was talking to you all saw a very small benefit, but granted, it was a benefit, so I can understand why they wanted to try to get as much as they could.
So as I understand it, really the issue comes down to whether we've got, for bank qualified, whether we've got the capacity if we're not using that up for Albemarle County. So I think it's the question is, if we're doing financings for the county, then we don't have the capacity to do it for somebody else where we might be earning a fee. That's really what it. That's
Well,
That's
at least every other year.
Yeah.
At least every other year, right? You don't
Right.
have
Right.
that capacity.
Exactly. And that's, there has been some discussion of raising the limit from 10 million up to 30 million. That's been kicked around in Congress. It's kicked around now for a couple of years. It's been talked about as a part of possible, infrastructure bill as well. So we'll keep you up to date if we hear of change, but that's just at this point talk, but that would help, obviously.
Yeah.
And just a quick clarification, the EDAs agree, if the EDA agrees to do this financing on behalf of the county, it just forecloses a nonprofit borrower coming to you and saying, do you have BQ capacity?
Right.
But it doesn't stop you from doing a regular tax exempt deal for that borrower. There is no cap per se on the EDA's ability to issue debt of any dollar amount when you take out the bank qualification topic.
That's right. Hopefully that answered your question. Probably a little more than.
I think you guys can hear me right now.
We can hear you, Don. And yes.
Oh, you can? Okay, good. All right. Well then, any other questions? All right. Any discussion before I ask for a motion? Although I guess I could ask for a motion and then we can have discussion. So is there a motion on the resolution?
Can we just move to approve, or do you need someone to read that?
My preference is that
Did we get a motion?
that we have someone read it. Yeah.
With someone with better glasses needs to read it. Thank you, George.
I move that the Economic Development Authority of Albemarle County, Virginia, adopt the resolution as presented relating to the financing of the Series 2021 project and authorize the chair and vice chair to endorse all documents and take any action described in the resolution to execute the plan.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. So there's a second. All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. Sounds like there is no discussion. So I will call, I guess we should probably do a roll call vote for this one.
Yeah, I can do it if I got it in front of me.
All right. Thanks, Richie.
All right, Director Long,
Aye.
Director Ray,
Yes.
let's see, Director Shreve, did he arrive?
Nope.
Director Munson
Yes.
and Director Imhoff.
Yes.
All right, and Director McNaughton disqualified himself. So that's everyone, and it passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks.
you all.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Thank you to the EDA for your support of the Albemarle County government. Really appreciate it.
All right. So Roger, you want to give your director's report?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. We've really just got a couple of short updates we wanted to make the directors aware of. One is that the county is going to receive funds from the American Rescue Plan. And that is going to come in two different tranches. We believe one in July, one in next July. The Board of Supervisors, a month or so back, agreed in principle to allocate a portion of those funds, which is $21 million, a little over $21 million in total, I believe. Some of that goes to Scottsville, but as a general rule, it's going to be around $10 million or so in two separate tranches. They've set aside $4 million in a bucket of funding called, they're calling it Economic Vitality. And in that bucket would be for economic development purposes, as well as human services purposes. So our team is working in concert with the Department of Social Services, the Finance Department, as well as the Office of Equity and Inclusion to come up with some of the best plans to use those funds with the greatest ROI. Of course, the Finance Department has taken the lead in getting this information to the board. We're behind the scenes providing conceptual ideas for the county exec's concurrence and the board to later approve. We just wanted you to be aware that a great deal of the work that we're doing behind the scenes is in preparation for how to best use some portion of the funds that I just mentioned to help our businesses either survive or reconstitute our economy. I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from any of the directors.
Roger, I don't have a question, but as you mentioned, Scottsville is getting a similar grant, and I would be really interested in what kinds of projects you all are thinking about doing. We've been having a lot of discussion about what we think we'd like to do, but always interested in having some other thoughts in that process. So any heads up you can give me on smart ideas you've got? I'd love to hear them.
Well, we have quite a few ideas going through the pipeline of approval. I think it would be appropriate for us to run this through our county exec's office. Once that gets vetted, I'll be glad to sit down with you, Stuart, share what those particular ideas are, both those that made it through the process and those that did not. Okay. I believe the Finance Department is going to the board on June the 16th to talk about some of these ideas. So for your planning purposes, I'll plan on sitting down with you sometime post June the 16th.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kat here. I guess my question would be, is there a way to make the discussion more transparent so that other people with ideas, the thing I worry about is if like all the conversations behind closed doors and there's not a way for public or other entities to kind of, add their good thoughts to the bucket.
Well, Kat, I'm not the driver of that project. I'll share that concept with the folks who are driving those. I do know that the process has been transparent to date. It was shared at the board meeting in April. Mr. Richardson, please correct me if I misspeak, where there was some general discussion about what to include and what not to include. And then I guess it goes back on June the 16th for the public to see what's going as well. So I wouldn't say it's not transparent, Director Imhoff, but I do see your point, and we'd be happy to entertain any ideas that this group has. You can do that presently today, and or if you want to email some ideas, love to accept those.
Yeah, I guess it would be good to know some of the parameters, kind of how large the bucket is, and if there's any guidelines or things that you're, I heard return on investment, so which I totally understand, but if you've got some even concepts, it would be helpful.
Glad to share those. Mr. Richardson, do you have any other comments that you'd like to add to this discussion? Not at this time. Okay. I will be happy to share that information with this group and give you an opportunity to weigh in. The other item that I just wanted to make you aware is give you just a little bit of a tourism update and talk a little bit about the average daily rates. And JT, if you could pull up that information, and I'll just kind of walk through it as quickly as possible. Did we lose JT? There it is. I promise I'm not going to go through this eye chart. But what I do want to point out is what you're looking at is really a Smith Travel Research Report, and it does sort of an in-depth look at how travel and tourism is doing across the United States, but specifically you're looking at information as it relates to Virginia. They measure the average daily rates that a county or a community is able to charge. They measure an occupancy rate, and then they combine those two numbers and give you a RevPAR number. That RevPAR number is a way to look at the health of the travel and tourism community. I'm going to ask you to, if you would, JT, to look at you may have to move around just a little bit to go to the Charlottesville, Albemarle County and look at item, I believe it's the other direction, JT. There it is, under Virginia area. If you would look at, so as you can look and go over to line item AG, which JT's highlighted, you can see that the average daily rates for this particular week is as high, if not higher, than all the comparable markets, save for, I believe, Stanton, Harrisonburg. I'll also mention that we compared this number to May of 2019, and our average daily rates have exceeded our May of 2019 numbers. Why this is important, it is much like our hospitality and tourism market was the first to be injured, it's also a leading indicator of economic recovery. Suffice it to say, this is extremely good news in terms of what the economy may look like now and moving forward as travelers are returning, and they're actually returning and paying rates similar to what they paid in 2019. This trend started a little over a month ago and is continuing to incline and trend upward. We just wanted to make you aware there's some leading indicators that our economy is on its way to recovery. Be happy to answer any questions you have as it relates to hospitality and tourism.
Hey, Roger, just a quick question, and I should know more about this, but did they close the tourism office on the downtown mall, and is it now a roving office? I'd love to, just for my own edification, know that.
Yeah, so they closed their office and accepting visitors on the downtown mall. They opened a back office to do work, and then they purchased 2 vans to have a traveling mobile visitor center. The CACVB board approved that roughly a year ago. The tourism vans are now out in our community where the people are. They're serving more people at a lower cost and hopefully increasing the daily spend average while those folks are here helping our local economy. It's really hard to track, to determine, would people have spent that money but for being able to meet this mobile visitor center. But the idea is so far been very successful.
And do you think with, post-COVID, I love using that phrase, post-COVID, do you think that they might go back to using volunteers and having some presence on the downtown mall? I don't have a firm opinion about this, but it just seemed like it'd be interesting to have some kind of stable officer, especially on weekends.
Yeah, I don't believe that's the plan. I can't speak for the CACVB board as a whole. The plan, as I understand it, is to have the mobile visitor center stationed there during key moments for the downtown mall, not to reopen a place that on the mall itself.
Roger, you might just mention that the CACVB is very hopeful and has been working with the University of Virginia with their new to come visitor center and gateway to the community. We will be able to have something at that facility as well, which will really be good. The complex they're building over on Ivy Road. Just to let you know, Kat. Right.
Yeah, we've had the van down in Scottsville a couple times. It's great. We really appreciate it.
I saw it at Stonefield the other day too.
Well, Mr. Chair, that concludes the director's report.
Okay. I do have one question before we go. Our next item is a closed session, and I don't know whether, I thought I might ask if we know the county's gotten feedback on sort of meetings and what the likely plan is in terms of having meetings in person, or where we are on that. I thought it might make sense to have that, if we could get an update, if there's anything to update us about.
I do not have an update. I do believe there's an agenda item on Wednesday to talk about this very subject, Chairman Long. Supervisor McKeel, do you have any other additional comments that you may be able to add some flavor?
Well, and Jeff, I saw Jeff unmute. He's probably going to speak to it, but you're correct. We do have an update on our agenda tomorrow. And since Jeff is there, I'll let Jeff speak to that. You're muted, Jeff.
I'm sorry, I hit it twice accidentally. Supervisor McKeel, thank you very much for recognizing me to speak to that. We do have the Blue District who will be at our meeting tomorrow afternoon. Dr. Bonds will come and give an overview as to the numbers in Albemarle County and the work that we're doing in coordination with Blue Ridge for this region, but specifically for Albemarle County. Our incident management team continues to work hand in glove with Blue Ridge Health District on a variety of issues. And we will be before the board tomorrow afternoon to talk about the alignment with the governor's office and with his most recent executive order and the loosening of the restrictions across Virginia. Don, your specific question on meetings, we have no plans right now as a county government. We do not have any plans to go back to in-person meetings in the next little bit. We're going to continue to monitor it. If the governor maintains the executive order beyond June 30th, we'll be okay to continue that. If the governor discontinues that executive order, we're working with our legal department, but we do have a period of time that we can go beyond June 30th. I'm hesitant to give a date as to when we would consider going back live, but I would say that for the immediate future, for immediate planning purposes, for this board and for other boards that are connected to county government, that we're going to maintain our current posture. Certainly, I would guess through the summer, and we're going to continue to monitor that. I think the final thing I'd say, and Supervisor McKeel may want to weigh in on this, is that once we do look to go back live, we're going to be exploring the possibility of looking at live along with participation from our public virtually. I think our public would certainly appreciate that. We've conducted well over 400 meetings virtual, and our public participation is as high as it's ever been for these meetings. And so I think there's a lot of advantages to us continuing to look at doing that. And so Ms. McKeel, you may have something that you would add, or Don, have other questions.
And thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. It is amazing how our public engagement, in some cases, I know staff has said it's doubled and tripled. And so I think the public, many people in the public, while there are some folks that are wanting us to go back in person, there are a lot of folks that want us to figure out a hybrid. Mm-hmm. I call it a hybrid of some sort. And so but that's going to take some thought and some planning. And it gets to what Jeff has said. So we don't want to just rush back to the county office building, as wonderful it is, and then leave lots of people behind. So thank you, though. I appreciate it. And it was a great question.
Yeah, I do think it's, the ability to have people participate remotely, I think is going to be a real benefit, assuming that it can be done or the statutes get changed to allow those sorts of things. So, all right. Well, thanks for that. And then I guess we will move to a closed session. So I moved the, whoops. I did move. Okay, there we go. I move that the Albemarle County Economic Development Authority go into a closed meeting as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.2, 3711A of the Code of Virginia, under subsection 5, to discuss and consider prospective businesses and industries and the expansion of existing business where no previous announcement has been made of the businesses or industries' interest in locating or expanding their facilities in the community, to wit, the location and development of Project Leopard and the location and development of Perone Robotics in Albemarle County. Subsection 6, to discuss and consider the investment of public funds where bargaining and negotiation is involved and where, if made public initially, the financial interests of the authority in the county would be adversely affected, to wit, a performance agreement related to Project Leopard and Perone Robotics in Albemarle County. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. The motion is adopted, so we'll move into closed session. And Jennifer has put the link in the chat.
Mr. Ray, I did text it to you as well.
We need to beam the rest of us up. Hey, Roger, while we're just waiting, I will just let you know that my CAC last night requested that you come back and talk to us about economic development.
Yeah, be happy to.
So we'll be contacting you. It's all good.
You feel free to invite JT and Jennifer as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I didn't mean to leave you all out.
I'm not so sure that they want to be invited, but I was.
I don't know,
The idea
Supervisor
was that they
McKeel, it sounded like a specific invitation to Roger. I don't think.
Well, Roger came once before, but you know, and we were talking last night about upcoming agenda possibilities. And they said, we haven't seen the economic development in Roger for a long time. We'd like to have him back. And I was, yes, all good. And I think we're populating most people back, so I'm going to stop now.
I believe we have everybody.
Okay. You guys hear me now? I don't know what's going on, but I'm having some serious technical issues here.
I can hear you.
All right. All right. I switched over to my phone. I somehow messed that up last time, but I think it's working okay now. All right. I move that the EDA certify by recorded vote that to the best of each director's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
And we have to do that by roll call. So I'll call roll. Director Long,
Aye.
Director Ray, George,
That's an aye.
He's here somewhere.
Yeah, he said aye. There we
Director,
go.
Aye.
Director Munson.
I do not see him.
I thought.
He was here too.
Director Imhoff,
Aye.
Director McNaughton.
Aye.
Let's see, we'll go back to Stuart. Director Munson. No.
Yeah.
I don't see him.
He may not have made it. And Director Shreve never made it into the meeting, so.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Director
All right,
Munson's
well,
not showing up on participants list. So he's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, everybody,
that's
everybody who
four.
made the transition. All right. So any unfinished business we need to discuss?
Mr. Munson just popped in.
Sorry.
All right.
Let's see, Director Munson, in regards to certification of the closed meeting, do you certify that only public business matters that were subject of the closed meeting motion were discussed and considered?
I do.
And I think we may have missed early on your location. All
I'm currently in Charlottesville.
right. Thank you, sir.
Hmm?
All right, so on to unfinished business.
I don't have any.
All right, Roger, anything you got?
I do have, under other matters, I would like to just point out that JT's wife is due June 1, and he will be taking some leave to be a good supportive father as he should. And I'm not sure if he'll be at our next meeting, but if he misses it, it's an excused absence.
I want to know if
All
this
right,
is the first.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Is this your first?
First.
Number one? That's cool.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Roger. Very excited. If anybody's interested, I will send along photos.
Please.
My wife thinks he's gonna look a lot like me.
Initially, you will.
All right, anything else?
No.
All right, well, our next meeting is June 15th. So if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned.
All right.
Stay healthy, all. Take care.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you later.